Hello boys and girls, welcome to the absolute beginner's guide for Dawn of War Soulstorm. Now, in this video, not only am I going to explain quite a good chunk of information about the actual specific game that we'll be looking at today, but also be covering some RTS elements in general. I think that a video like this would be quite useful for people who are not familiar with the genre and also familiar with the game, so that way they can play and stuff. And maybe if you don't play, but you like watching my videos on the YouTube or other people's videos on the YouTube, and you get more enjoyment out of casts and videos when you know more in-depth stuff about the game. So yeah, but I think it'd be a good idea. I think it'd be a good time to spend between us. Now, before I get into any major detail about the game, I just want to make it very clear that at the moment I'm playing in Unification. Now, this video is exclusively going to only be about Soulstorm, but I'm in Unification at the moment because I've got these two little icons here which you will not see when you're playing your games. Just able to disable the AI, and I'll swap between the two if I get bored and want to do some other bits and bobs with another faction. So first and foremost, before we even start anything, what I want you to do, just in case it's not on, I want you to go into your menu, and I want you to go into your options, control, and make sure this help text detail is on for when you're playing your games. I'll recommend you probably play some skirmishes before you actually play against real human beings, because one, if you play against real human beings who are experienced, probably demoralise you from getting absolutely smashed, and also just good fun, you know, to get you familiar with the game when you're playing with stuff. So yeah, I'll explain every single thing that's on the screen at the moment. So top left hand side, quite an important thing, you've got your economy. You've got your requisition resource, which is just generally used for buying almost everything. You'll notice that the blue, it's called requisition resource. I call it blue money because requisition resource is a lot of syllables, but blue money is a nice, happy way of saying it. So yeah, you'll notice that everything has got, quite a fair few things have got blue money, and as you get on later on in the game, things with green money will start appearing. Generally, it's for vehicles, heroes, upgrades. All that stuff is what your green money is for. Now, your blue money comes from places like the strategic points and other things from that, which we'll explain later. And your green money comes from plasma generators or your faction's variant of said thing, which again we will talk about in the near future when we go on to the economy. Over here, you've got your squad cap. So this dictates how many squads you can have on the field at a time. Generally, most squads have got, the Scout Marines here, I've got one squad cap. These Prime House, but again, there's no Prime House at Soulstorm, but ignore them, pretend they're regular Space Marines for now. They've got about 2 squad cap, so that's that. And then the vehicle cap over here explains how many vehicles you can have on the field. Again, same kind of thing, some cost 1, some cost 2, some cost 3, depending on how big and beefy those vehicles are. Now, if you're playing with a friend, which I do highly recommend you do, just because learning to play with a friend is a lot more fun, and well, yeah, because everything's just fun with friends. So, and I'm sure you've got plenty of friends, just like me in real life. Anyway, minor diatribe there. So we've got general ping. So if you want to just focus your friend's attention to somewhere, like, oh, hello, there's a thing going on over here. Now, if you right-click on it, it changes what the ping is. So we've got an attack here, ping. We've got defend here. We've got resource here. We've got capture here. And that is about it. So, you know, if you're one of those people, maybe you're playing with other people, but maybe you're not on Discord, maybe you've got a randomer on your team, that's really good. And also, if you want to set, this is sending pings to team, but if you click on it, then you can change the picture to triple little crosses, and it sends pings to all. So if you want to, just spam and really annoy people, that is a thing people do. Maybe that's just advanced tactics going on right there. Up at the top right-hand side, we've got chat, which obviously there's no chat available because I'm in skirmish at the moment, but you can click on things. I think it's left-click to talk to people on your team, right-click to talk to all, or it's the opposite way, whichever variant of that is. Diplomacy, if you want to send people resources, you can have a requisition or power or blue money or green money. You can also request and break alliances if diplomacy mode is on. Usually isn't, so don't worry about this too much. But if you're ever playing a game where maybe it's like a free-for-all and you want to gang up on the big person who's winning the most, then that's an option too. That is certainly an option as well. Got objectives, just to remind you what the winning conditions are. Now, usually in players versus player games 1v1s, got these 3 conditions. Take and hold, which is capturing and holding half the critical locations for about 6 minutes or longer. Maybe it's a little bit different, and the critical locations look like a regular strategic point. You can see here they've got like a little cross thing going on, whereas these ones have got like a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 sectagon. Shit, I teach maths for a living. I'm so sorry. Without my notebook, I'm absolutely pants. But it is a shape which is not a square and not a circle. It's a hybrid of the two. There we go. I'm reinventing maths here, boys and girls. So, yeah, so if you capture them, and you can also see the critical locations controlled point over here, just to remind you how many you have. It also has a little timer going on. And there's also a strategic point controlled victory condition, where if you control, I think it's more than 50%, or a good chunk at the very least, and that will tell you how much you've got. And that, again, the countdown will go for that as well. And generally also you've got Annihilate, which is just destroy all the base buildings that are capable of unit production. So things like your stronghold, your barracks, but again, we'll go through those in the near future. Now, little things down here, we've got select next builder. So let's say, for example, I'm way over here. I don't know where my builder unit is. I can press this, and it'll send me to the nearest one, I do believe. And then if I press again, it'll send me to the next one. And if I double click, it'll select all of the ones in my current earning capacity, if that's even a phrase. Down here, we've got research next or add-on. So just basically, I can press this and cycle for all the buildings that have research that I can research. And then next military units. In fact, actually, I will select a military unit, which will be the scouts. And they'll come out. Little timer comes out to tell you how long it will take for them to go for. Generally, the early units come out a lot quicker than others. And here are our scouts. Again, if I go over here and press this next, this one, there we go. Oh, it's on the, right, I apologise, it's idle. So if these guys are busy, then it won't select them. So that way you don't accidentally take someone off a job that they were already planning to do. So if you're having like a busy combat, maybe down here there's a whole battle going on, you think, oh no, I need some more firepower. Do I have any spare units? A casual click on this will then help you figure out if you've lost any units, which in a game like this, where multitasking is quite a big thing in all RTSs really. So that's a super duper useful button. Now, before I go and explain these, in fact, should I explain these things now? Yes, I will explain these things now. Right, so, got the Scout Marine Squad, and the entire game really is squad-based. You've got some units, like builders, commanders, tanks, stuff like that. They are single models, as in there's only one model in that unit. If it dies, and that is it. Now, these dudes, they're in a squad, right? And they do everything together. Best friends forever and ever, amen. Now, if one of them die, the squad is still alive, and you're able to regain some models by adding some squad members here. So you can click on that, and that will do its thing. As it goes up, another boy will join them. Now, quite a lot of times, you don't want to do this, because if you queue up stuff, it takes money from you. Even though that's not yet been bought, it still takes money from you. If you look on the top left-hand side, I press once, I press twice, it goes down. So generally what people like to do is they right-click on this little symbol. And that way it will then, we'll wait in anticipation, but one dude will come out, and then another dude will come out, and it will just straight away, if you've got the money for it, it will then reinforce those boys. Now, imagine you've got like a whole bunch of these lads coming out, and they are all auto-reinforcing. And the battle's chaotic. You know, you don't know which way things are going, and you want to and all your boys on auto-reinforce, because you want to make sure that your army is staying in the fight. Now, if I auto-build them, they're going to do that. But let's say I want to stop. Let's say, oh no, I'm running out of blue money. I need to make them stop. I can press pause all Overwatch. It will finish what they're doing, and then no more. It will still be there. So if I then unpause it, it can then go back on. How cool is that? Really super useful piece of information there. Now, what if I don't want that to be unpaused? What if I want to make sure it goes away forever? So if I right-click, I can then cancel Overwatch, and that will get rid of the flashing symbol, which indicates that Overwatch rebuilding of the boys are going on there as well. So that's that entire bit sorted out there. We also have a toggle taskbar. If you just want to see things a little bit more clearly, you can get rid of that stuff as well. And we've got some information about the unit itself. So over here, we've got the health bar and the morale bar, which we will talk about health and morale in a short while. You've got a little showing which unit you've selected here, a little picture, as well as the number of lads or ladies that are in the squad. You've got the melee damage, so that's a rough estimation. I could go into a lot of detail about, the estimated damage, the types of infantry, armor resistance for each individual unit. This is absolute beginner's guide. I'm only going to give you the information that you need, because otherwise you're going to go mental. And some of that information is better learned on the scene rather than listening in a long form video like this. There are other videos that I've done, there are other YouTubers that have done a lot better job than I have at explaining that, which I will talk about all that later. So yeah, you've got the melee damage, you've got the range damage, which obviously melee is close combat, ranged is when they're firing their little guns. You've got the squad size, so how many lads are in the squad and what the maximum squad size can be. You've got the number of weapon upgrades, which we'll talk about soon, and the type of squad that they are affected against. So this is basically, so your infantry, so these are like lightly armored dudes. Heavy infantry, it's obviously slightly heavier. You've got buildings, commanders, demons, etc., etc. You've got a whole bunch of different types, which, actually, we may as well talk about the weaponry while we're here. In fact, let's get a armory up on the go. So armory is where you get your upgrades from. Every faction has a version, every faction in Soulstorm has a sort of version of this, and if you want to build a armory, or any kind of building for that matter, you click your builder unit, which you always start with 1 in the game, and you press the build. Also, ignore this. This is unification stuff, just completely on top. That doesn't exist in Soulstorm. Bad symbol. But you press that, and you press the armory button, and then you can left click, and then just place it wherever you want, so long as it's within the zone of control of your base. You can also increase the zone of control by building some stuff on these strategic points, which we'll talk about in a few mementos. One thing you can also do, if you don't fancy building it, and you start and you don't like it, you can always press the cancel construction, and that will get rid of them as well. So, we've got scouts over here, and they're able to get 3 different types of weapon upgrades, which are very important in Dawn of War Soulstorm, as that will change the abilities or even what kind of units that they're effective against. So they're able to get Flamer from Tier 1. Tier 1 referencing the beginning of the game, so we shall get 1 Flamer. And the little tooltip tells you exactly what it does, so upgrades 1 member of the squad to the indicated heavy weapon, or where have you gone? A handheld flamethrower, short range, effective at breaking enemy morale. So sometimes you will see when the units have got a bunch of stuff about maybe it'll turn up if I build up 2 flamers. But you'll notice that one dude is now carrying a flamer, and the actual squad symbol has turned a reddish pinkish colour. So what that means is that if I say, for example, if I select 2 squads, you'll notice that down here both squads are now selected, and you can tell which one has got the upgrade because this squad here has got all the red stuff. Yeah, I can swap between the 2, and that's totally fine. But if I want to make sure that I'm selecting this one, that's the one that I want to go for. Now, you'll notice as well that this actual flamethrower itself has got the same colour as what this squad now has around it. Each one of these will have a different colour surrounding it. So if you get familiar with the colours and you select all your scouts, you'll know exactly which squad has which weapon based on things, which is super duper useful. So if I select the whole squad, I can think, right, okay, well, you know what? I want these guys, so I'm going to click on them again. And now I've isolated them, and they're able to go about their wicked and foul business. Also, while doing this group selection, when you left click and drag your mouse over, notice how that if I do this, selects the scouts, do this, selects the builder. If I select all at once, it only selects the actual fighting unit. So if you've got like some micro to do in the base, maybe someone's assaulting you and you need to fight them off, you can just basically select everything and attack them, and without risk of selecting your builders. Now I think if you shift and click, or is it shift and, or is it alt? No, never mind. Aha, right, okay, so if I select a bunch of boys and I think, oh, actually I don't want this squad, I can shift and, hold on. Have I done it? Yes, I have. Okay, nice one. For a second, I thought I was wrong. Yes, if you hold on Shift and drag the box, it then deselects some stuff. You can also just Shift and click as well. So you can shift and click to select all those ones. You can do that. Select that, and then also you can deselect them as well by the same kind of mechanism. So isn't that cool? So I've got some boys in the field. Let's see how we can actually control them to make them do some stuff. So you select them, and you right-click. Basically makes them move around as per normal. You can also, if you're feeling really fancy, you can left-click this move, and then select that. So I'm not sure why you would, but you can do that. Also, if someone's doing something and you want them to stop, you can just press stop, and that will just make them cease their provocations right there and then. You've got attack move, where you can select. Now, ignore this ring of fire. I think that just basically shows its range or something. But essentially, you click somewhere, and they will move somewhere. And if they see any enemies along their way, they will stop to fight them in whatever stance you've put them in, which we'll talk about in a bit. You can also attack in melee, which just basically means that you can, rather than, you can just force them into fighting in melee by clicking on an enemy unit that you can see within you. So quite useful. Now, over here, we've got a couple of stances. We've got hold your ground stance. So they're standing here, and they see an enemy nearby. They will move to engage at a certain range, but then when the enemy gets away from them too much, they'll stop aggroing and then kind of just chill out a little bit. So if you don't mind them moving about a bit, you want them to be a little bit aggressive, hold ground stance is quite nice. You can also stand your ground, which means that they will not move even if there is enemies nearby. They will start shooting at them, but they will not reposition themselves in any way, shape, or form. Now, if you hold ground stance, these guys with the bolters are able to fire at a longer range than the flamethrowers. So what these guys will do is that they will all move until all their guns are within range. But if I put them on stand your ground stance, they will basically not move, and even if these flamers are not within range. We have got, wrong way, burn stance, which basically these guys just decide to focus on, well, they prioritize buildings and stuff. So if you go for like some base harassment and you're not too bothered about fighting the actual enemy units inside their base, you can most certainly do that. The next one is ceasefire, which means, well, it says what it does on the tin, really. Just, they don't want to fire, they're not going to do it. Sometimes you would use that for a infiltrated unit, which we'll talk about later. And the infiltrated unit, sometimes maybe you don't want the enemy to particularly notice that they're there. You can put them on ceasefire and maneuver them around. Or maybe you've got some artillery and you don't want them to do any friendly fire. So you just put them on ceasefire, which is quite cool. And the attack stance, basically anyone who comes in contact with, they will chase forever and ever our men, and nothing is going to stop them going, so that's good. And we've got range stance, so these guys will fight in ranged combat stance. Well, they will fight with the guns until someone engages them in melee, in which case they will then fight in melee. And then you've got assault stance, which basically they will then prefer to attack people with their swords or whatever, maybe punching people in the face, and however you do that. So it's useful in situations where maybe you've got an enemy unit who can do better than you in range stance, so you may as well go and smack them around in the face to prevent them from firing their guns at you. We've also got additional buttons. Like I said, we've got the buildings over here. And you'll notice as well that in the little tooltip just here, you've also got all the shortcuts and hotkeys as well. So they're always quite useful to memorize. Each faction, all these buttons are the same for each faction, but then in fact also these as well are generally the same as well. But for the actual buildings themselves, they're all specific to the faction, although listening post tends to be, usually it's B and then L are quite consistently similar between all the factions, but they kind of change and differ as you go. So yeah, you can build with your servitor or your builder unit. You can also repair as well, which basically if a building is damaged, you can go over and start repairing that, which is quite useful. So let's have a brief discussion about the economy in the game before we actually talk about tactics and stuff. So essentially, every faction will have something called a capping unit, which is available from the faction's HQ building. So we're going to go Space Marines purely because they're probably the easiest ones to explain, and if you are just dipping your toes into Dawn of War Soulstorm, or even just as your first RTS experience, I would highly recommend just getting familiar with the Space Marines, or maybe even just playing the campaign, just because the campaign is quite useful for explaining bits and bobs. Well, when I say campaign, I mean the original Dawn of War, because they do their campaign where you unlock little units at a time, so it's quite a relaxed way of getting familiar with how the actual physical game works. But essentially, you build them from the HQ, they come out, lovely little animations going on as well. Also super useful for if you're in the enemy base and you're trying to figure out which of the enemy production buildings are making stuff, because their building will actually start responding. So these guys come out, and all you need to do is that you see a strategic point, and you right-click on them. A little nubdual comes out, a little computer which rises up. These guys pop a flag on, and then they will then do a little purrs, and as you can see, the little bar up here goes all the way up. Once that bar is fully up, you have then captured your strategic point, and it will increase your blue money. Now, we are on standard resources, so I think it's 6. It goes. Let's see how much I know about the game. While this is going on, actually, I'll send these guys over to the relic, because, oh, those relics as well. But that is a square. That is definitely a square, and that is definitely a circle, so well done me. I know my shapes sometimes. So they're going to go off. They're going to do their own thing. We can ignore them for now. And when they capture it, is it 6? Yes, it's 6. Well done me. I know what's going on. So, we've now got some more resources, and also increases our line of sight as well. Line of sight being the area of stuff where we can see what's going on. So obviously, this is Fog of War. We don't know what's going on over here. Although, if someone is firing at you from outside your line of sight, you will be able to see them just because you can. So, we'll notice over here that the actual capture time for a relic is a little bit longer than the standard strategic point. So, you've got to be careful with defending this, because if you lose it, it will take you a longer time to be able to reclaim it. Same with the critical locations around the map as well. These also do provide you some blue money as well as they've also got quite a decent area of sight, line of sight around them. So that's a useful thing for if you want to get a better eye in the sky of a particular kind of area. Now, you cannot build what I'm about to build on a critical location, which is a listing post. Put one on there. And what happens now is that, let's say, for example, I captured this strategic point down here, and there was no listing post on there. What my enemy can do is come over and then start decapping it, which basically is exactly what I just did then, but the other way around. There's a little animation. It takes a little while to decap it. The bar basically goes back downwards, and then once it's down, they then start capping it, and it goes back up as well. You'll also notice that now that we've got a relic, it even shows you over here how many relics we have. And it's just a nice little well done. This little well done star. Right, so the listing post has been completed, and you will see that our blue money has now gone up by a little bit more. And a really handy thing is that it tells you how many resources have been generated inside your listing post. So this is 12, and they do go up by increments of... Oh, it's increments of 6. So when we get some upgrades for these later on, as I will explain, they that will happen. You'll also notice as well that your stronghold or your HQ will also give you 20 blue money as well. So it's actually quite useful in knowing this, because if you know exactly how many blue monies that your structures are giving you, you can also look at the enemy, which I can actually turn around over here, and you could then make a rough guesstimation on how much their income is as well. So good to keep in mind. Oh, turn off the AI, Mr. Landshark. Yeah, so it's good to know that kind of information, just so you can have a rough estimation of what your enemy is doing. I'm also going to pop down a plasma generator, which is what we use to build up some of our green money. In fact, I'll even build up a second servitor so I can build stuff up. Now, when you're building things, one servitor will build at a certain speed. If I get a second servitor, he'll come out, I pop him over, and then you'll notice that the construction speed has increased. Now, as far as I'm aware, that's maximum speed. 2 models on one thing will not increase it any further. So if I could put on 1,000,000 servitors, and they will not build any faster than 2 servitors. That is my understanding of it. Jagus Art did a wonderful series of top tips for new players. He's also got a wonderful series on build orders for specific factions in this game. I'll go for like maybe a couple of common build orders for new players, but if you want like some highly specific stuff, I'll put links into his channel in the description so you can check him out. Also, Papa Jagus, where are you? I mean, we know where he is. He's got a tournament on the go, so quite excited to see what he is up to over there. So yeah, so we've now got some green money incoming. For every generator, there's about 10. So in fact, yeah, like I say, we'll pop down another one so I can build stuff later. So one thing you can do with listening post, notice that there's no guns. There's no guns, so it's quite vulnerable in the early stages. But I can get a fortified position add-on, which will just basically is an upgrade that you can pop on your listing post, which will give it a gun. Also increases the amount of blue money that it is generating. So quite a useful thing indeed. So we'll wait for that to go on, and we'll also get you guys to come over here and capture a critical... We'll get you to capture the critical location in the center, just so we can see what on earth is going on. And you also notice as well that because I've captured the listing post, I'm then able to increase the size of my influence, where I'm able to build bits and bobs. Not all structures have this. Say, for example, a heavy bolter turret I could place anywhere on the map, with the exception of very close to the critical location. That's the only place in which I can't really build stuff in. And this also, I could build this in enemy zones of influence. And if you're not familiar with a bolter turret, essentially, pop it down, and it detects infiltrated units. I think a lot of turrets do that, I do believe. And it just stays there, fires at anyone that comes nearby. So quite a useful little trick. There's also something called a minefield, which you could pop down. And, oh, speaking of infiltration, infiltration is basically when a enemy or when a unit becomes invisible, and only certain kinds of units can see them. Can we actually get infiltration? No, we've got to get to tier 2 for that. I think that's the same in Soulstorm, because like I said, we are in unification, but that's fine. Oh, I can actually research some skull probes, and that will then show you what they generally look like in game. Yeah, heavy bolter turret is done. You can also attack, but there's no things to attack, but you can do that. You can force them, because they generally like auto-attack whatever's nearest. If I want to change its target, I can attack whatever. And yet the minefield is here. Infiltrate, you can tell, because it's a little bit invisible. And anyone who stands on there blows up, which is quite useful. But yeah, here we are. The listing post has been upgraded, and we've gone from 12 to 18 resources. So yeah, they go up in increments of 6, but in the game settings, you can change that to be larger or smaller, depending on how fast or how quick of a game you want to happen. And now we've also captured the critical location down here. I can select that, and yep, that is definitely another 6 blue money incoming in, so it's quite useful. Even if you don't need the vision, just the additional money is always useful. And yeah, look at the size of that vision. So super duper useful, especially from a defensive or offensive perspective. Alright, let's have a look at some of the buildings. We've got the armory, which is what I had to build to get some of the unit weapon upgrades. No, I don't think every unit needs a armory or whatever faction they do, but generally, if you want to beef your boys up with particular weapons, you do tend to need an armory. And armory upgrades is it's what you get from the armory or your research building. They come in generally 3 flavors. So you've got your stuff that either increases your general health for units, or maybe it increases the morale, or the damage that they do. So you'll notice that down here, we've got some health, got some morale. I'm going to click on War Gear Bionics, which is, it also tells you how many chances there are of upgrading. So this one says that it's the first of 2 possible upgrades. We click that, it's going to start going up. And you can also, like, tier these up as well. You can, not tier them, you can queue them up. But I'm not going to, because I don't want to. So yeah, so you've got general upgrades for everyone. Then you've got specific upgrades. So say, for example, this one, Furious Charge, it only affects Grey Knights. And ignore the word Honor Guard, because they don't exist in Soulstorm. But we're not talking about that. So yeah, so you've got specific upgrades for specific units. Heavy weapons increases. Quite a few factions have that way. You're able to increase the amount of heavy weapons that are available in your squads. And you also have like individual commander upgrades. Say, for example, these guys, not these ones. For some reason, I can't get Squad Sergeant at the moment. Bad example, Mr. Landshark. Bad example. Bring out some Space Marines, which I will bring out the Chapel Barracks. Some 2 boys to build it up. But generally, quite a lot of units, they've got like a leader that you can add to their unit. And that's what these upgrades are for. It gives them better weapons and better ranged weapons and all that stuff. So there we go. So that's the armory. We've got the Chapel Barracks, or the Tier 1 unit production building, which is where you get, well, all your Tier 1 productions. In Soulstorm, there are 3 tiers. So you start the game in Tier 1, and then you go into Tier 2. You can upgrade into the next tier by going to your stronghold, usually, and clicking on whatever it says. It usually says HQ add-on or something to that effect in there. And also for the Space Marines, you can also get your squad cap increases and vehicle cap increases, which is what we talked about earlier on. Right, so Chapel Barracks, here we are. We've got the Space Marine squad. We'll bring those boys out as well. You can also get some upgrades inside the various other buildings as well. So we can see here, the stronghold, you can get sniper training. We got that infiltration research for the skull probe down here earlier on as well. But yeah, generally you can find like lots of upgrades in different buildings. In the obviously for the chapel barracks, these upgrades specifically refer to the units inside here. And here is a Space Marine squad. So again, same kind of deal. You've got the flamers, plasma guns, all that stuff. You've got the scouts, well, not the regular sergeant. And one thing that's really useful is that if it's grayed out, it will tell you just underneath the upgrade's name what you require to be able to access that. So say, for example, this one says Monastery HQ add-on. So, you know what, I might even go into Tier 2, just so we can have a little look at that. So as we wait for the Tier 2 to take effect, once we've paid for it, we'll see like a little research bar going up for it. Same kind of deal with this. You can see exactly how long it takes to research things just at a glance. So I can actually click on these boys and know exactly what the state of my research is for all these lads as well. Now we'll also get Force Commander. He is the Commander unit. Now Commander units quite strong in the game, considering that they've got something called Commander Armor. Notice that these guys are heavy infantry. Also their stats over here are different as well. Same effect, or well, same counter, or that they are good against infantry and all that jazz. I do apologise for rambling a little bit as well. This is not the kind of usual format I do. I know like some people will probably do this kind of video with like lots of cuts and screen words, titles and transitions. I don't do that because I'm an old man, and that's not what I do. I'm just not proficient in that manner. So here we go, we've got Space Marines, and now that we've got Tier 2, all this stuff is available to us. We can also see all their stuff there. We'll get Sergeant in there just for good measure. And the Commander is soon to be out as well. So there he is, old Commander dude. You'll notice as well that he's got some abilities down here which require research of some description. He also has one really useful thing about a lot of commanders, is that down here they've got the attach or detach. So he moves out on his own, like I said before. Individual models, they do their own thing. And if I wanted him to have friends, I could just attach him to something, and they will then work together. Now you can't attach it to all squads. Some squads don't want any commanders with them. But generally, you can attach most commanders to most squads. And that's quite useful because sometimes you want him to go off and do his own thing. Maybe you're fighting someone and these guys are firing at them and they're taking in a lot of ranged fire. So you can bring your Force Commander, whatever commander you have, go over there, bonk him in close combat while these guys are firing. Or maybe this guy's a little bit low on health and you don't want him to be singly targeted out. You can make him join a squad, and when he's part of a squad, and there's lots of fire incoming, no one can focus him. It's going to basically attack all the lads around him as well. So it kind of spreads out the fire a little bit evenly. Okay, so let's do a little bit on combat. So, we've got a ranged squad, and we've got a melee squad. The only major difference is that these guys primarily want to stay at range purely because they've got longer range weapons. And these guys, well, they've got melee weapons, so obviously they want to go in and do some slashy, smashy, bashy stuff. So we've got some Chaos Space Marines down over here. I'm going to send one squad of Space Marines in. Now, notice how, if I move them in, you can't really see them. Oh, I see them. I can now right-click on them, and they will start attacking. And they will just go over there until they're all within range. Which is not ideal, because obviously, you know, that's a lot of Chaos Space Marines. It's not enough. In fact, actually, we should probably get some more lads in there. So I will right-click to auto-reinforce those guys, and then looking to go back in there, but we're not going to let them, because we've got them on hold ground stance. Might also put them on stand ground stance as well, just so that way they won't move around and stuff. Now, when you're moving and firing, you're less accurate. You're more accurate when you're standing still, unless, of course, you're very... other factions or other units can move and fire with, quite good accuracy, but generally, if you move and shoot, you're not doing as much in the way of accuracy, and lower accuracy means lower overall DPS. Now, we're going to move them in again. So in stand ground, or hold, yeah, stand ground stance. We're going to right click, and they're going to wait till. Oh no, never mind. Why are you doing this? Okay, well, maybe it's a little bit clunky sometimes. Oh, I know why. Right, so I'm going to move them back. We're doing a lot better now, but let's make sure that all the Chaos Space Marines also have plenty of boys to play with as well. So they're also on stand ground stance, so that's why they're not moving around all that much. So we're going to move these guys forward. And what we're going to do now is that we're going to place the attack move. You can also hotkey this with A. You're going to A move them in. They're going to move forward, and the moment they see them, they should stand still and attack them. Or maybe you won't then. Whatever. Oh no, there we go. Do a little bit more effectively. So these guys, it's not the most effective thing, but it's better than maybe sometimes like what we saw earlier where they were doing lots of movement and all that jazz. But yeah, but actually, not very effective at all. Not very effective at all. Generally though, you want to make sure that your units are actually microed properly. By micro, I mean that you're paying attention, a lot of focus on these individual units and commanding them as and when you need. I'm gonna make a fall back. So that is like range combat, just everyone standing still and doing some shooting towards each other. Now, if I give these boys some more lads as well. Oh, yeah, they're all still on auto-reinforced. That's quite useful. So these melee units are now going to come in, and I'm going to air move them in as well. They're going to go forward, and when they spot them, also reinforce them as well. They're going to go in, and they're going to see these guys, and they're going to start bashing them in close combat. Now, once one model from one unit is in close combat with another model, everyone engages in close combat. So no one in the squad can fire now until the melee combat is done. You'll notice that these guys kind of like huddle around one of the model. You can all see that they've doing some kill animations as well. I do believe that when people are in their kill animation stance, they are immortal. So it's just a bit more flashy stuff to really get your teeth sunk into. You'll notice well that these guys have now got a little red symbol around them, and that they're, well, you can't see it now, but when you look at a unit, you can see the unit's morale as the blue, and that other bar there just explains the health and stuff. Now, once that blue bar is over, and you saw that little red circle around them, that means that their morale is broken, which basically means that they do a lot less damage, they move a little bit faster, but other than that, you generally don't want people in combat when their morale is broken. And you generally lose morale when you take a lot of damage or lose individual models. And the only way you can really regain health, or should I say morale, is when you're far, far away from combat. Or just, well, not far away from combat, but you're just not sustaining a lot of damage. Now, some units, like say for example, Space Marines over here, don't have an ability, rally, you press that, it just regains their morale. But like I said, don't worry, because that's a faction-specific kind of thing. You won't have that available for everyone. We'll probably go into that a little bit more detail later on, possibly, potentially. Now, one other thing about combat which might be quite useful for a beginner to know is that at the moment, we're in no kind of weird terrain. Everything's totally normal. But if I go down here, there's something called light cover, which basically you'll see like, well, in Soulstorm there'll be a little symbol. Oh, no, yeah, there we go. A little symbol coming over, which tells you that they are now in cover, which means that they are going to be taking less damage. Now, 3 kinds of terrain in this. There is light cover, which gives you a little bit of defense against ranged attacks, but it will make you move slower. There's heavy cover, which basically gives you even more defense against ranged attacks, but makes you even move even slower. And then there is negative cover, which increases the amount of ranged damage that you take. So always useful stuff to know. If you're ever in a situation where you're fighting someone and they've got lots of range units, you can always just move into some cover, and that might give you the advantage that you sorely need to win that battle there. You'll also notice as well that while these guys are in cover, it also gives you a little handy-dandy little symbol underneath the unit card stating the what kind of bonuses is in effect. Now, if you ever see like this, or if you look at these submarines, they've got a little attack bonus on the go. If there's one symbol, it means that they've got like a little bit of a bonus. You see 2 symbols, it means they've got a fairly decent bonus, and a bunch of other different symbols as well. Red ones usually indicate a negative effect going on with them. So if you're ever wondering maybe why you guys are doing really well, or maybe they're doing a little bit poorly in combat, you can always double check and see if they've got any kind of effect on the go for them. So that is basically everything, like the really super basic stuff to explain for a player who's never played Dawn of War or an RTS before. So I will go into just generally more like the actual playing of the game stuff itself. Now that I've got a head around some of the more basic concepts of things. Okay then, so you're in a 1v1 situation, and you want to know how to go about your business and get total and utter victory over your opponents. Let's talk about what you do initially. So, first thing you do, usually, is that you want to get some extra lads out. You've got basically 3 main concepts to think about in the early game. You've got economy, you've got defense, you've got offense. So the economy is probably usually the first thing that you get online more than anything else in the world. First thing we're going to do, a very common build order for most factions. We're going to get 1 extra builder, and we're going to get 2 capping units. In fact, I'll save the capping units for later, but just pretend that I've clicked those and they're building right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select my servitor, or maybe I've select both of them. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on a unit production building, which is the chapel barracks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and click. That means that these guys are going to go around and build that. Now, if I go back into build, and I press plasma generator, and I hold shift and I click again, it will summon this, but these guys won't be doing anything with it at all. They will not start building this until they have finished this stuff. Now, that's an important thing to think about, considering that in a game like this, multitasking is, by and large, the most important thing that you need to focus on. Without multitasking, you find it very hard to do stuff. The whole point of an RTS is that you are doing one thing, and while you're waiting for one thing to finish, you are also doing another thing. So as much as you can do shift-clicking to tell people what to do in a general order of things, that's super-duper useful. In fact, looking back, that sentence probably made no sense, but, you know, like I say, it's that's a good thing to keep in mind. So, one other thing that you can do also to help you in the early game and have less stress and having to micromanage everything is that you can set rally points. Now, we can have a click here, and if something's being built or yet to finish be building, you can rally something there, and then if a builder unit goes over there while it's still being built up, it will then help build it straight away. So generally you would start building a chapel barracks, then you would summon a servitor, right click on there, it would come out, start building that, and then you would shift click onto the plasma generator, and that's all good fun. Now, if I've got a Scout Marine squad and I want them to cap stuff, capping being the term for, well, capturing points, I can right click. You might not see the red symbol there, but they will come out and they will start going off, and then, there we go. A little red symbol there to indicate that it's rallied there, and you can go and do that. Now, while they're doing this, you can also tell them shift and right click. Once they finish building, well, capturing this, they will then go over and do that as well. So, yeah, that's how to basically do everything in the initial first minute of the game with the minimal amount of stress humanly possible. So, like I say, you normally build maybe 2, sometimes 3, depending on what kind of build order you are going for. And you'll go around, you'll capture your bits and bobs, your nearest and dearest, some would say, or your fairest and farthest if you want to go further afield. Once you've done all that, you capture all your bits, and in fact, actually, I'm just going to make them capture everything, and I'm going to get these guys to start building up a listing post as well. Like I say, 2 on 1 is quite good. Generally, but it takes about maybe the time, it takes half to build up a listing post for these guys to capture 1 strategic point. So while these guys are working together in tandem, like then 1 point want to bring this guy over back here. By the time he walks over here, you can then have a listing post ready to build on top of that. So that is your economy. You want to make sure that your blue money is coming in quite nicely and that you've got a plasma generator on the go if you're not going for any crazy rush build, which I would recommend in your first few games. Probably not trying to go for rush builds. Rush builds meaning that you forego the long-term economy and you build as many units as humanly possible and get into your enemy's base before they can build up their economy and smash them to high heavens. So let's think of some defensive strategies, because I think defensive strategies are probably a lot easier to explain than offensive strategies in the initial early game. So you'll notice that because of these victory conditions, which are the very standard ones that are popped on most games, prevents you from turtling. So defense is not going to be your end game strategy. Obviously, you're only going to win if you're a little bit aggressive, but defense in the early game is quite useful. One thing you could do to help with your early game defenses is you can look at your listing posts and you can upgrade them. Which one, that will help you with your economy in the long term. It will also help you if anyone comes around and starts bashing your listing posts. Maybe all your fighting forces are somewhere else, fighting the enemy or capturing other things, and this will dissuade any small groups of enemies from coming over and taking on your listing posts. Generally, tier 1 units, or these capping units in particular, aren't particularly good at destroying buildings, but they are quite effective at capturing these strategic points. One very common strategy that you see is when people are capturing things, you'll see another capping unit. So imagine if these guys are capping this place, and you'll have an enemy capping squad nearby, and they will stand there and they'll wait. Just watch and wait. And then the moment that this strategic point has been captured, they will then start decapping it. And you can't do anything about it. You can kill them, but you can't really, no matter how much I click they won't be able to do anything with that. Now, one thing that you could do to prevent people from doing that is by popping on listing post, which is what we've done over here. So no one's able to cap this until the listing post is brown bread.
Defending objective.
Oh, one thing I also forgot to mention as well. Some of these buildings have got stances. So, say for example, everyone that's built from this building at the moment, let's say for example, I pop out a Force Commander, he will come out in hold ground stance. Now, if I left click that, change it to the stand ground stance, when he comes out here, and I will right click to rally him over here. Also a very good thing if you know that there's action going on in this general area, but you don't want to, leave him standing around in the chapel barracks. You can rally him over here, and he will start coming over here on his own. Yeah, I would always say to rally somewhere useful, somewhere where you know your camera's going to be or where your attention is going to be. That way you don't have like units just knocking around on your base, doing nothing and just basically being rubbish. So one other thing you could do for defenses is, like I said earlier on, you could do turrets. And turrets they could just basically put down wherever you fancy. Now, say for example, one really common thing to do on this map in particular is, notice there's 2 strategic points here. Now, if I wanted to defend them with some automated turrets and stuff, I could build a listing post, and then upgrade them. But that's take some time, and also that's a lot of resources for 2 strategic points. Or what I could do is I could take a bolt turret and pop one right in the middle, which then will then cover both of these strategic points. So anyone going into capping range will be shot down by this. We could put one here as well. Generally wherever you think there's going to be lots of argy-bargy and combat going on. But it's very situational. I wouldn't recommend putting too many turrets down. People do fall under the trap of putting down lots of turrets, thinking it's going to help them. And I mean, what are these? They are 90 blue and 45 green, so quite a heavy investment, especially in the early game when you start 100 green. And you basically need a lot of that to get your economy up and going by getting these upgrades, because it's quite essential that you, at the very least, build listing posts on everything. Can't stress it enough. See, a lot of times, like really new players, they don't build listing posts on their strategic points. And I can't say it enough, because effectively, this strategic point is worth 6. You pop a listing post on it, it's worth double. So you double your economy by building listing posts on absolutely everything, and then you triple it by upgrading and stuff. So your economy quite quickly snowballs if you are playing the economic game. So as defense, I suppose, yeah, we can also mention minefields as well. If you're, say for example, maybe someone's capturing your point and maybe they are stealthed, you can always build a mine around them. Or what we saw in the game the other day when people were playing Ultimate Apocalypse, someone was building a heavy bolter turret in the middle of the base or in the middle of the map, and well, you see at the top, if you notice, no melee damage, no range damage. If you build a minefield right next to them, these cheeky boys can certainly deal a fair whack of damage. So that's defense in a nutshell. And by the by, I do apologize. Like I said, this isn't a very efficiently edited video or anything, but also, like, I won't be going into. I know there'll be people in the comments screaming, "Ah, you should have mentioned this and should have mentioned that." Like I said, this is for absolute beginners. We don't need to explain absolutely everything. Oh, by the by, commanders can't capture critical or any locations for that matter 9 times out of 10. Same with vehicles as well, with the exception of a couple. But yeah, so the offensive kind of plays. So every faction will have a tier 1 commander. Now these boys are generally good at taking a lot of damage and going off on their own. And quite often you will see players, they'll get their commander, they'll come over and have a little perk, and see what's going on. Now obviously these guys aren't really up to much. These guys they've got their AI turned off, and so they'll just be standing around. But also one more thing as well is that the whenever you got hero, they are on this side here, so able to be found really easily. I could be over here, big fight going on, or maybe there's loads of fighting going on, and you think, oh, I want one hero to do a specific thing because he's got an ability that'd be really useful. Just click on that, and yeah. And also, if he's attached to a squad as well, that squad will also be highlighted for your convenience. So this dude's going to come over, and let's pretend that there's listing posts everywhere. And you notice that none of the listing posts are upgraded. So you think, okay, well, because he's not spending money on upgrading his listing posts, he might be potential, or she, because girls play this game sometimes. Sorry, Cat Girl, I do apologise. But yeah, so if you see that they've gone for exclusively tier 1 listing posts, you think, oh, okay, well, they probably have a lot more money saved up then, so they're probably buying a lot more units for smashing you in the face. And if you see lots of these upgrades, you probably think, oh, okay, well, they're probably playing a little bit more defensively. So maybe you can then either, you know, upgrade your own listing post yourself to catch up with them, or maybe you could turn up the aggression yourself and see what you could do to get some map control. Map control referring to, well, the control of the map. You know, if I've got, say, for example, if I've got a unit over here, and I've maybe bought like a turret down, maybe I've got like 2 units, and I've capped this, and I've also popped a listing post on there, I now have got more control over the map. And the more map control you have, yeah, fair play, it'll be a little bit harder to defend, because obviously there's more map to defend, but the more map you can deny your opponent, the less resources they are likely to get. And also as well, the less information they have, because if you've got an enemy who's able to walk around the map freely, they're able to look at what you're up to as well. Whereas if you focus them and force them into a corner, or a particular area of the map, they've got no idea what kind of listing post situation you've got going on, or what kind of buildings you've got inside. Now, you'll notice that while we're over here, I can't see anything of their base. But I'm going to come over, and I'm going to be like, oh, hello, how are you all doing? Hi, my name is Force Commander. First in Force, second in Commander. And look, there we go, we've seen him. And I do believe that when he starts taking damage, yep, you'll all see a troop under attack icon. Now, if I am miles over here, I can click this, and it'll show me, oh, look, there's action going on. It's super duper useful. Always look on the left-hand side of the screen. It'll also tell you if you've built anything as well. So say, for example, if I built a squad of Space Marines, it will then tell me I've finished building them. So I can just click on that. It will take me to the Space Marines, and I can then just control them directly from there. Now, one thing you'll notice as well, that now we've got 2 little red pips on the map, which will indicate that there are baddies about, or where their structures are. And even though they're now no longer within line of sight, I know that they're here. I know exactly what's going on in the base. So I could actually get my Force Commander, run all the way through. In fact, I'm going to click, and I'm also going to shift click over this way. So when he gets there, he's now going to run out this way. And 9 times out of 10, you probably wouldn't do this. But just for, you know, just demonstration's sake, because I mean, look at this. He's trying to get past him, but the pathing in Dawn of War isn't amazing, I'll be honest. So yeah, so he's going to go around, going to see what the enemy is up to, and he might, like I say, see listing posts, or he might see other things going on which make you think, they're either playing the economic game, they're playing the defensive game, or they're playing the offensive game. Which, that will inform you of what you need to do. If they're going economic, you either go aggressive, or you go economic yourself. If they go defensive, well, that means you can go economic, because if they're spending lots of money on defenses, then, well, you could then just spend things on upgrading, and taking up, and buying lots of plasma generators. And if they're going offensive, well, then you might be able to think to yourself, okay, well, I either need to also go offensive, or go defensive. So if you go economic, well, obviously then you've got nothing to defend or attack with, so that is that. It's like rock, paper, scissors, which is, I think, is my least favourite term for any kind of RTS game, because if anything's rock, paper, scissors, then that's no fun. So some important signals to know whether you're doing, or should I say, whether you're on the right track, especially in regards to the economy. So in Tier 1, if I've got a listing post on absolutely everything, I've got one upgraded here, and I've also, oh no, I've not captured any critical locations, but right, so if I've got these listing posts knocking around over here, my economy is 85 at the moment. Generally in Tier 1, your economy should be anywhere between 80 to about 100, maybe 110. That's usually a healthy amount of economy. And maybe anywhere between 10 to 20 green money incoming. You'll notice that it's gone down to 9 as opposed to 10, mainly because over time, things start to decay. So the reason why this is because, well, if your economy, well, if these strategic points are giving you maximum resources all the way through the game never ends. It absolutely never ends. So as the game goes on, these listing posts and the plasma generators will be giving you less and less economy. Now, you can tell exactly what kind of state they're in when you can look at the lights, essentially. So green means everything's hunky-dory, everything's fine, you're getting maximum resources from them, and it'll stay green until maybe it gets to like 3/4 of what it used to be. Then it will go yellow, and when it goes to about half, it goes red. I think that's the general term, but you don't need to know exactly the numbers. All you need to know is that green means maximum economy, and red means you are on the verge of basically getting like quite a lot less money than you used to have. Now, if someone decaps the point, and then you recap it, it goes back to green. So there's a little debate going on whether, like, if you go into an enemy's base, do you decap their points and then give them a chance to regain it, or do you just leave it in the hopes that you then don't reset their economy? There are pros and cons for both. The earlier in the game, the more likely you are to decap stuff, but you also gain advantages from decapping by preventing them from building around the strategic point, also denying them the vision as well, because you'll notice that all these guys have got, like, vision, and they can fire at people within their vision, but some people have got ranged weapons that fire longer than their vision. So, say, for example, the Space Marine Squad, I should have really built some of these a little while ago, but, like, these guys will have heavy bolters, and they could fire just a little bit outside their vision range, so that's quite useful to know. So, some early aggression advice as well while we're knocking around in the early game. So, you'll probably have, like, a couple of capping units that'll be busy capping things. They'll have your commander, they'll be going around poking things, seeing, like, if you can, like, get any pickups or any kills or anything like that, or just generally, like, seeing what's going on. And then you'll have your regular units, and you'll be wanting these guys to start pressuring the enemy listing post and strategic points. Take down listing post, decap, and then probably run away. Or if you're feeling really spicy, let's say, for example, the relics are always a good thing to go for because they take a lot longer to recap once they've been decapped. Yeah, so you'll be doing that. Also, one thing as well, these relics are quite useful because if you capture one of those, then they give you the option of getting a relic unit, which is your faction's super duper special unit later on, which that's in tier 3. But we'll go into that because that you know, just know that later on in the game, when you're high up in the tiers, you'll get that's what you need this. So just make sure that you have this at some point later on in the game. So you could send these guys in and start fighting these guys, and what they'll do is that this will start firing at them, or it'll be a listing post if it's been upgraded. They'll start firing at them, and because they're heavy infantry, generally I do believe that no, they do not tell you what they're effective against, but they are generally effective against infantry and heavy infantry as well. They'll start firing away, and because these squads aren't specifically designed for bashing buildings, it might take them a little while to get them down, but usually it doesn't take them too long. Now, one thing you can do is, because your commander has got commander armor and is resistant to a lot of incoming damage, if I pop these guys around the back here, I can send the force commander in, and then what he'll do is that he'll absorb all the incoming damage, and then these guys can come in and then fire away. That means that this dude will then protect himself. Well, he'll protect your squishier squads from dying, which is what you see quite a lot of people when playing the game do. Now, bearing in mind as well that he's a bit of a, how would one say, it's not without its negatives, because obviously force commander or your hero does cost quite a fair bit of money, and when the health goes down, it does take them a little while to regain their health. Later on in the tiers, like especially for like Space Marines, you can get apothecaries and chaplains, which do increase the health regenerate, but in the early game, any damage done to your leader usually will not be regenerated for quite some time, so do bear that in mind. You don't want to send them tanking all the damage straight away, but it is quite a useful thing if you want to make sure that you deny a listening post that's been upgraded and stuff. Also, one thing I completely forgot to mention in the economic phase is that when you build a listening post, it does refund some of the cost. So, like, if it costs, I think it's something like half cost or something. Either way, you build it, and then you get a big splooge of extra money in there, which is insanely, insanely useful. Now, in these early engagements as well, it is quite important to take into account the difference between range units and melee units. So, in general, melee units will beat range units in melee combat, and range units will beat melee units in range combat. Makes sense, right? You know, if you've got the bigger guns, you win in range. You've got the bigger sword, you win in close combat. Now, there are ways to counteract certain enemy units. Like, obviously, these guys don't want to be in close combat. So let's say, for example, I send these boys out, and they are going to air move all the way over here. And I'm also going to put them in aggressive mode as well, so they definitely go for them, right? So my Space Marines, mind their own business, lovely day for the Emperor and all that jazz. And then these baddies come along, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to be engaged in close combat, so we're going to move them away. We're going to move them away as best as we can. Now you'll notice that these guys, because they're melee, will try and bash them, but they can't quite exactly hit them. So moving away from melee units is quite a useful thing. But obviously, while this is going on, they are, you know, they're not firing. They don't fire backwards. So it's not useful for them. But notice how, because they've been on attack mode, they're just going to constantly chase off this squad for as long as possible until they, they're thinking about going for another one. They can't quite decide yet. So Space Marines are now going to have that attack path, and the Raptors will change their minds. So let's see if I can get these guys over here. So let's just pretend, because I'm not going to swap between it over and over again, let's pretend that these guys are still running away, right? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, we can't bash them in close combat because they're just being big wet girls' blouses, and they won't allow us to hit them. What we can do, swap to ranged, and if you pretend that they're running away, you get into close combat as close as you can, you stand them still, and then you fire, they run away a little bit, you move after them again, and then you fire at them again. It's not the most effective thing, but obviously these guys are running away, so they won't be firing at you. So if you want to get a little bit of extra damage with your melee squad, then that is one way to do it. And in the early game, a little bit of damage can go a very long way. Now, let's say, for example, you are in an engagement, and maybe there's 2 squads of melee units, and you've got 2 range units, and they're making you run around and stuff. Let me get a squad of... we've got 2 squad Space Marines. Well done, Miss Landshark, for planning in advance. So these guys are both on standing ground stance. Now, I'm going to show you what... So I can't remember what it's called. It used to be a tactic or a skill that was mentioned. Was it either in Company Heroes or StarCraft? It was where I first heard and learned about this technique. But let's say, for example, you've got 2 squads of Space Marines. First and foremost, it's well worth to note that if I stand these boys quite close together, and then a melee squad comes in, they can engage both of these squads. And that is not good, because obviously we don't want one melee squad to tie up 2 range squads. So one thing we can do is move them away. And then that will just prevent that from happening entirely. So quite important is your formations in certain environments. So now, if a melee squad comes in, these guys can run away from them forever and ever, amen, and these guys can just shoot at them forever, right? And then let's say, for example, the melee squad is like, oh no, these guys are fighting us, let's charge over here and start bashing these guys. You can then move these guys away and stand these guys perfectly still. So that's one way to take on melee squads in the early game, because I know some people do struggle with some sort of melee rushes. And also, if all else fails, as you probably saw a little bit in that engagement there, fall back to these. And in theory, if those Raptors were chasing after them, those Space Marines could have ran around and around and around this all day long, and it would have taken the listening post a little bit of a time to kill all the Raptors, but they would have done it eventually, and so that's something. And I mean, realistically, you might not have been able to kill... I mean, I suppose that's one benefit from having a squad system in this game, is that you don't need to get full squad wipe. If you kill some things, it will take the money to regain them as well, so it's all for the greater good in the grand scheme of things. So you've got your economy on the go. It's maybe about 4 minutes into the game. You've been pressuring some bits of the enemy base. You're defending some of your other bits, and yeah, and your economy is maybe between, like I said, 80 to 100, maybe 110, about 20 to maybe, yeah, I wouldn't say 40. Yeah, about 20 is probably the biggest you probably need in tier 1. You'll have 2 plasma generators and stuff. So now we're gonna tech up. Now, teching up does take a while, so you need to make sure that you are teching up at the right time. Also, it costs a lot of money. I mean, what is it? 300 blue and 125 green. So you need to make sure that you're in a position where you're able to actually spend this kind of money. Because, I mean, one of the main problems is that it's a lot of money to invest, and you don't see a return on that investment until a little bit later in the game. So it's sometimes a bit dangerous to tech up. Generally, you know it's safe to tech up when you've either got a surplus or something called a float, which where you've got too much money, and you may as well spend it, because spending money is always useful in a game like this. Or you know that you've beaten back the enemy recently, maybe you've killed a fair few squads, or maybe you've killed a fair few models within those squads, so you know that they won't be attacking you anytime soon, so it's safe to tech up then. But, I mean, you can tech up whenever you want. Like I said, just in those 2 circumstances, probably the best time to indeed tech up. So now that we're in tier 2, and you can usually tell you're in tier 2 just by looking at a building, because your HQ will now look a little bit different. You'll also see that there's like build add-ons at the bottom. I think in Soulstorm, it only says built add-ons, But you can also see your little symbols down here as well to know which kind of tier you're in, should you ever forget. Although, probably you won't ever forget because you're not that daft, are you? You're alright. So yeah, so there's three main things you could do. So you can either go even harder on the economy. So now that we're in tier 2, we can upgrade to a heavily fortified position add-on. Increases the health of the listing post, as well as gives it some more shooty bang bang bits. You'll also see these little flags down here. Escalate engagement research. Same with the power generator, you can get the strengthened power grid research. Now you'll notice that for both of these, this one costs 200 blue and 40 green, and this one costs 75 blue and 250 green. So sometimes when you enter tier 2, sometimes you'll go for one of these straight away. Maybe you've got one kind of resource that there's a lot of, and you don't want there to be a lot of. You want to make sure that you're spending all your money. Because one really important thing in the RTS game is that you're spending your money as often as humanly possible. Because spent money, well, money that isn't spent is just wasted money, isn't it? You know, there's no point in having this amount of money if you only have this amount of forces on the field. You want to make sure that you're constantly spending it in the most efficient way humanly possible. Now, so yeah, so you can have a further go on for the economy game if you think you're safe enough, or if maybe you are attacking, and on the back of attacking, I suppose that's one thing that I should have mentioned in tier 1, is that if you play the aggressive strategy and you're bashing things down, you're probably saving up a little bit of resources yourself by not building anything yourself. So on the back of attacking, once you've done your initial assault, you can then pull back a little bit and say, right, okay, can I afford anything? And, you know, you can then, like, start, you know, buying things or upgrading your economy and stuff. So that's a thing as well. So for almost every faction in tier 2, that's when you're able to first start getting your vehicles. And that's one of the paths that you can go when you're in tier 2. Some factions get vehicles in tier 1, but we can get some vehicles in tier 2 as the Space Marines. Now, if you get the early tech-up advantage on your opponent, generally no faction has anti-vehicle weapons in tier 1. So if you know that you've definitely got the tech advantage on them, going for vehicles is always quite a good option, as well they won't have any counter to them for quite some time. So you go machines now, or vehicles, sorry, and you'll notice that quite a lot of these vehicles, if I hover over them, they've got, with the exception of the land speeder and the rhino, they've generally cost a lot more green than they do blue. So if you ever want to go vehicles, you've got to make sure that you've got a sizable amount of green income. And sometimes, like I say, you'll normally only see 2 plasma generators on the go. But if you are planning on going for vehicles in tier 2, quite often you'll see people, once they've hit that tier 2 button down here, they'll then start planting more plasma generators as they go. Because like I say, when you build a listing post, it then gives you a refund of some of your blue money. When you build a plasma generator, it then gives you like a little boost in green money as well. So, you know, extra bits and bobs will then help you get your first vehicle out. If you're not fancying vehicles, you can always get your armory, which we saw earlier on in this video. And what you could do is that if you think, okay, well, you know what, in tier 1, I was quite aggressive. Spent a lot of money on my infantry. There's no point in transitioning to vehicles since I've already spent a lot of money going on for these boys. So what I'm going to do is that instead, I'm going to buy them lots of upgrades. So as I mentioned earlier on, there's health upgrades, there's damage upgrades, there's all the upgrades they can get with their, you know, heavy weapons, with their sergeants and stuff. So you can invest more into these boys if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, especially for Space Marines, because they've got anti-vehicle, anti-personnel, infantry, heavy infantry, and morale, you don't usually go wrong without upgrading your Space Marines and such. And again, like, you can also increase the amount of heavy weapons that they carry and give specific upgrades to specific units. Because one other thing as well that you can do is that if you don't fancy upgrading these boys anymore, you can upgrade, well, you can get more higher tier units, which I do believe is in the Sacred Artifact. So you can get some Grey Knights from here, or from whatever your faction's specific building is, and go for the more elite units or infantry for your faction. Now, I've talked about the small engagements between range units and melee units in the early game, and with the commanders tanking some damage from the listing posts. But towards the mid to late game, you'll start having larger engagements with multiple units, which can be quite intimidating at first, because, I mean, essentially you'll have all these people, and you'll think, okay, there's an enemy, I'm going to right-click on one of the enemies, and then that will then have all these guys fire at one particular unit. But generally, that's not what you want to do, because your enemy will probably have a unit composition, which unit composition refers to the total amount of units engaged in a battle at any one given time. And some units will be more effective at killing other units. Say, for example, these Space Marines over here, I've given them some missile launchers, you can see on there. In fact, actually, I'll even give you a little look-see around the side. There you go, they've got their large cans of beans ready to smite enemies for the Emperor. These guys will be more useful against vehicles, as you can tell also by their unit card down here. Also, by the by, some people say, oh, this is really accurate, some people say it's not really accurate. It just depends on who you... Like I said, it just gives you a general idea of what you want your units to be doing. So, for example, like these Space Marines, apparently they're better in close combat. Do you want them in close combat? Probably not. Probably not. So yeah, so these guys are good against vehicles. I've given these guys heavy bolters, so they're good exclusive against infantry, but even more so, obviously the Force Commander is here. Now, one good habit to get into when engaging in a large melee fight is that you press A, or you select the attack move, and you move them over here, and then as they start engaging, you can then select individual units and start sending them in one different direction. Now, if I select them all, ideally I would know where my units are. I know that these guys are the anti-heavy, the anti-infantry. I know these guys are the anti-vehicle. But like I say, if you ever get lost, select them all and say, right, okay, well, anti-vehicle is green? Yes, it's green. Yes, well done, Miss Landshark. So you can select them, and then, oh, there's a vehicle over there, and infantry over here. Well, I'm going to target the vehicle, and then select them all again. Oh, well, blue is infantry, so I'm now going to select them to do that. Or maybe, oh, my Force Commander's got an ability that I really want to use. I can then select that, and then, well, actually, so to send an individual command, I don't need to then select him again to make him cast his ability. I can do this, select his ability, and then click it on wherever I want. So that's one thing that you can do, rather than trying to isolate individual units in the prior mentioned manner. So let's have a quick talk about vehicles as well while we're knocking around this neck of the woods. Most factions will have transport, and transports are insanely useful, specifically because, I mean, the map's quite big, aren't they? You know, there's a lot of space to traverse on, and so if you've got a lot of map to control, then quite often a good idea is to get a transport, which will just come out like this, and if you want your boys to get inside that transport, you just right-click on them, and then they get inside, and the transport will have usually two little pips there to tell you how many boys are inside. So, you know, you could set some guys in and then send them in, and it has usually enough room for 2 or 1 squad. Quite often it's 2 or 1. I don't think there's any transports that have room for 2, or sort of more than 2 units. Now notice that the Force Commander is taking 1 whole slot. He's a big chunky boy. Now if I want him and the squad to go in, I can attach him into a squad and then make him jump inside, and look at that, they can all fit in. So that's a useful tip to know if you want to make sure that you get the maximum space out of your transports there. We also have other units as well that are quite useful to have a look at. We'll bring out the Hellfire... Oh, for goodness sake, I've got to research Blooming. What do we call it? More vehicle cap. That's useful, because then you can just go over there and just click on that, and then, yeah, you've got more vehicle cap, which is something. Now, some factions, for their squad cap and vehicle cap increases, it's not research, it is building up a specific building. It's like Orcs have got the War Banner, Eldar they've got the Webway Gates, Dark Eldar they've got their Slave Pits. But you'll figure that out as you're learning the game. You'll notice that when it's pot full, it won't build anything. But, say for example, if I want to build something that I can actually build, I can then do this, and then we'll just nudge this guy backwards, and then he'll be coming out right as rain. And I think he's already prepared, so I think he'll just come straight out, but we shall see. Yep, there we go. So it was already prepared to go, so don't worry, like, if you're thinking, oh, well, I can't build anything else while all that pop cap is done. No, you can tier up another thing, and then they'll both come out at the same time when they're both good and ready. We've got 2 types, well, we've got 3 types of vehicles in general in Dawn of War. You've got walkers, you've got skimmers, or flying abilities, really. Flying units, although this isn't a flying unit. In fact, I should really actually just get a flying unit. That would probably make a lot more sense for explaining things. And then you've got tanks. And essentially walkers, they are affected by heavy cover and light cover. They can make use of that. And I think they can. Hold on. Yes, they can. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that in cover you can also regain morale faster as well. So that is definitely something to take in mind. These dudes, they're not gaining a benefit from cover. They're just there knocking around, I do believe. And look at this dude. It's flying. It says what it says on the tin. It just flies over impassable terrain, which is super duper useful. So there he goes. And those are generally the 3 types of vehicles. Walkers, sometimes, I mean, this one's a Hellfire Dreadnought only with ranged weapons, but walkers generally have a melee weapon, so they can engage in ranged and close combat stuff. These guys, obviously, no melee version. And tanks, well, they're just tanks, aren't they? Just go about stuff. You can also get artillery, which, in fact, can I be bothered? Nah, well, we'll be bothered to go in there, because tier 3 we don't really need to look at, because essentially it's just the more of what I said before in tier 2. You get into tier 3, do you go more economy? Do you go more upgrading your infantry, wherever I've put them over here, which are there, or you go more elite troops and stuff like that, so that's a thing. But, what was I saying? Oh yes, artillery. So, artillery basically, they come out, look like a tank, and quite often they will have something called a attack ground, which will be a button down here, which means that they can just basically attack. They don't need a target, they can just attack in a general kind of area. It's quite useful for if you don't have a line of sight of something, but you know the enemy's there, like when we saw earlier on, that when you see a building but move away from it, you can still see the building there. You can fire in that general direction. If you know an enemy's congregating somewhere, maybe like around a strategic point or a critical location, you can bash them from a distance with relative safety. But I think that's really all I need to do in explaining how to actually play the game. I think we've covered basically the fundamentals of everything, and the rest of it, you just kind of just play and figure out as you go through. You just kind of, go about your business, play a few games, usually against AI. I reckon that, play against AI until they can beat hard, and then maybe go online, maybe do some comp stomps with other people, get familiar with them, maybe do some 1v1s with some friendly people and stuff. And yeah, so what I'll do is because you'll probably notice that the game looks a little bit different than your version. Essentially, I'll just quickly explain that I've got a reshader on just to make the graphics look nicer. I've also played this via the mod manager, which in fact, actually, can I just show you now? Look at that. Here am I in the blooming world of Not Dawn of War. So this mod manager. Essentially, it's just got all your mods on and stuff, and anything like that. You can also click on something like Disable Fog, which, yeah, that's actually a really useful thing, because in the actual game, there is a fog which makes it quite difficult to see across the whole battlefield. Go on settings, just the usual gubbins and stuff. Now, if you are playing Dawn of War Soulstorm, the main thing to take into consideration is this button here. You don't want this on. Click this off, because you won't find anyone in the actual game to play, because you'll be able to see the games, but you won't be able to join them. So make sure that this is turned off. And yeah, to be honest, I'm not a technical man. There's loads of people in my Discord and varying other Discords, which I will leave all the links in the description below for you to be able to figure that out. And if you want links to all this stuff as well, it is in the useful mods section on my Discord. So you're able to go there and download a whole bunch of things. Like, say, for example, the camera mod, because I'm zoomed out. This is, you can't normally zoom out this far. Pardon me. Oh, heavens forbid. Yeah, because normally you're zooming in about maybe like this much, aren't you? Which is not nice. But this is happy, and then this is just good for when you're doing like large battles and stuff, and you want to have a look at the idea of the battle. And you can have your camera mod installed and your disable fog thing installed. And if the opponent that you're against doesn't have it installed, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect your game at all. So you can have these mods installed and it all be totally fine. So the only other thing I can think of in relation to this video is that I've probably overlooked a whole bunch of stuff. Because like I say, this kind of video is not my usual forte. I don't normally do videos like this, because casting, you just watch a game, you say what's happening on screen. That is what my brain can handle, because I'm not a very clever man in all honesty. But what I might do for the future is do a follow-up video. So if you've got any comments or any questions about the game, about general what should beginners focus on and stuff like that, if you leave them in the comments in this video, then what I will do is at some point in the future, maybe, because I've got a really bad habit of starting series and then not finishing them because I'm a bad man in the brain. But, you know, I will try and answer some of those questions, but just not technical questions. Because, like I said, I'm not a technical man in regards to how to install or why can't I find games and stuff. Those kinds of questions, ask them in the Discords, because those people are infinitely more clever than I am. But yeah, if you've got any more questions about how to, you know, play the game or get more comfortable from the perspective of a absolute beginner, then please let us know. And like I said as well, that there are, for Soulstorm in particular, there is Jagus Art, who does wonderful build order things for different factions in the game. And for Unification specifically, if you want to branch out into the mods, which I would recommend getting familiar with Soulstorm first, in all honesty. Get familiar with Soulstorm before starting to play around with the mods, because also the player base for Soulstorm is a lot bigger anyway. But if you do fancy dipping your toes into Unification, the Laughing Max has got a bunch of tutorials on his channel on different factions. And Ultimate Apocalypse, no one's done any yet. I should really do that at some point. But Ultimate Apocalypse is a whole different kettle of fish. It plays, in my honest opinion, it feels like a different game sometimes. But that's neither here nor there, because that's mod people. This is Soulstorm, baby. That's all we're focused on. So yeah, that's all I've really got to say. So I hope this video has been useful to you boys and girls at home. Please do consider having a look at the Discord and all that stuff if you want to get involved in games. Soulstorm is quite easy to find games. You just go online, and there's usually a fair few games on the go. But if you want to play with like specific people, in my Discord, they've got a fair few games on the go. I know that the UK Discord has got a fair few games as well. I will also, I can never remember which Russian ones are the actual like official Russian ones because I can't read Russian. But if you are a Russian person and you know Discord, DM me in the Discord, and I will put your links in the description as well, because there's, like I said, there's a million of them at the moment because they're everywhere. Those Russians, you can't get away from them, which we love. We love them because, you know, they have a good chunk of the community. And yeah, cool. So I'm going to stop rambling, and I'll see you in a bit. Peace.